Welcome back to the Table Rush Talk Show, where we dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, marketing, and personal growth. I'm your host, Mischa and today we have Chris Mercer. Chris goes by Mercer. Oh my gosh, I totally blew that. Co-founder of Mercer U and measurementmarketing.io. Mercer is a measurement marketing expert who helps businesses optimize their marketing strategies through data-driven insights. Get ready to learn how to transform your marketing efforts by leveraging data to drive real measurable results. And you also have profitschool.com. Chris, welcome
And
to the
we've got
show. I
profitschool.com.
mean,
Yes.
yes.
Thank you. This
Yeah.
is awesome. We made it. We made it. Actually, I like you keeping all this in there because it keeps it authentic. And if we can be the best at being the worst, we'll start there. That's cool. We got
Right?
nowhere to go but up.
Nowhere to go but up. Let it rip, man.
There you
And
go.
yeah, I'm a big proponent of messy action and good and the
Yep.
best is the enemy of more than good enough.
Yep. We in our team, we can definitely have conversations around this for the rest of this hour. And so, but one of our sort of isms that we teach the team is good enough to get going, then you come back and make it better later. And the team will have these conversations sometimes where they're like, wait, we're not quite getting to action yet. Are we talking about step 3 and step 4 before we even started step 1? You know, and it's like, and they now realize that they can kind of get out of their way and get back to action and be like, you know what, let's make it good enough to get going. We'll come back and make it better later. So I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's a skill set to be built
It is.
too, right?
It absolutely is.
And I would
Yeah.
also say if in the entrepreneurship game and the marketing game, it's key.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
else we just get stuck on development and yeah, we never get rolling. Which also, I'll tell you one thing I'm obsessed about right now. You're all about measurement and data to drive growth and
It's all
not
about the
only
systems. Yeah.
go ahead. Say that again.
I say it's all about the system. Exactly. Right. Measurement being one of those. Absolutely right.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to touch on all that. But while we're on this little riff here, I'm really seeing nowadays how we can launch the idea and not the product. And if we
Mhm.
get confirmation on the idea, then we can deliver.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That
Yeah.
minimal viable product theory
Yeah.
of getting it out there. We've done lots of things just as a quick example of that, where you'll send an email, you know, kind of testing the thing. Hey, we're thinking about doing this. Would you want to do this? If so, join the early bird list here. And then you
Yes.
get them to take an action. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you 24 hours. You're going to be able to buy this before anybody else can, a full 24 hours in advance. And if you find that everyone goes, like, I don't think that's like, no one signs up for that, then you're like, oh, is this really a thing?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, should we even do that? And it just takes an email to do that. So people, I think, can sometimes complicate that. I always try to get things done in the simplest possible way, you know, and
Yeah.
that's email is a great way to do that.
Yeah. Speak to this for a minute. I have a buddy who's obsessed with brand. I don't know if consistency is the right word, but he will not take messy action oftentimes or not put out messy content or messy video. It's like, go get a testimonial and throw it out there. And he's like, well, I want to make sure it's brand this, brand that, looks right,
Yes.
has the right f-stop, this things like that, deep focus, whatever, insert what could make it wrong here or not polished. And it holds him back a lot, I think.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts to that about a polished brand? Because it is a very polished brand, but
And that's the trick, is it depends on the status of the brand. Like normally, like if we were using Zoom or something, I'd have a virtual background that's got a Measure U, you know, kind of classroom on it with the Measure U shirt on. You know, I've got Measure U's a rebrand of the older site we used to have called measuremarketing.io. I'd be wearing the Measure U hat in a couple of weeks because those just got ordered, right? So the brand is, I think, is important. You have to reinforce that brand over and over and over again. Now, is it okay for Coca-Cola as a brand to put out something where they think it's kind of maybe or maybe not going to be great for the market? Yeah, they call that test marketing, right? They do it. They do tiny little things and they do this little test markets to see if it's going to work or not. They do just enough, right? And then if it works in those test markets, they will expand out the product, right? And do some things. So bigger brands still do that. So the trick isn't It's how you do it, I think. So there are certain things where you can say, okay, what needs to happen? For example, if we were doing it at Measure U, it might be we do a quick and dirty conversation where you and I are going through the power of podcasting and marketing and how you do it as a podcast host and how you've grown the podcast. And we have this great conversation. Would that be better in the brand of Measure U as slide decks and everything else? Absolutely. But we're not doing that right now. We just have this talk. So what can we do? So we would take that, we would say, okay, we're going to edit the talk, run it, put it in the video bumpers so it gets branded as Measure U. So that sets the expectation of that. Maybe run it through some AI and create a little template where it's got here are the notes of it. So it's got the action steps necessary for people to be able to take action. Because at the end of the day, that first couple of seconds is going to look like every other lesson. It's going to have that video bumper. So it gets branded as Measure U. So now it's Measure U brand presented content. And the whole idea of Measure U is, yeah, I need you to feel good about the brand. But at the end of the day, we are here for action. And if you're not taking action on what you're learning, then I as much as I appreciate you being in the community, I'd rather you go someplace else and not do anything. Right. Because I want to have people that are taking action and building muscle. That's what we're here for. And that's what everyone's here for. Right. But it's how you do that. So it's like, oh, we gave you the 6 little steps you could take. We summarized the notes for you. We gave you the action clicks so you could do that. And so we would build the content so that the structure matches the brand, even if in 6 months we're going to go back and actually do slides and pretty it up and re-edit the videos and do everything else on the next version of it. We'll make it better later. We get that good enough to get going out there first. So going back to your friend's example, without trying to go down the rabbit hole of it depends, what I would do is define clearly, okay, what are the absolute things this brand has to have? Like every one of our videos has to have that bumper on it. We're not going to put somebody else's bumper on it. We're not going to just copy content and dump it in from YouTube with, and even if we did, we'd have to put the bumper on it. Like that's the first step is everything starts and ends with that. They all have a certain look. They all use a certain font. So that stuff is brand related. It follows the brand guidelines. It reinforces the brand because you have to do that. I think brand marketing is actually going to get more important, not less important over time, especially with AI. But as you're reinforcing the brand, you're shortcutting trust, right? Where the market needs to know if they can trust what Measure U gives them as content. So if it looks random and different, and like a million other groups that you can find stuff, there's no they can't shortcut to the trust to go like, oh, this is a Measure U thing, I can trust it. Those bumpers are anchor points where every time we're about to say this is something you can trust, and at the end when we bumper it again, we're like, this is something you trusted, and we're doing it over and over again. So there are some simple things I think you could do that are sort of pillar components of a brand that you can use to reinforce it. But if you don't have, you sort of decide, okay, I have 100 touch points of a brand that'll be a perfect brand. If I can get these 10, it's good enough. Like move forward with those, see if it's going to work, then you come back and make it better later. And I'm a big believer in that, especially if it's keeping you from action. I have a very good friend who's in a similar mindset, and it works really well for me. He creates offers, but he will spend forever on a sales page, not let that offer go out. He's doing pixel by pixel with his developer. I mean, I kid you not, pixel by pixel. Move this one over 1 pixel, move this up and down. And I'm like, man, does this matter? And at the end of the day, I kind of think it still doesn't. He swears by it. He's got the results that show it works for him. Who cares? Like if it works for him and he's getting action, and that's the trick. He's getting action. He's not sitting with like, gosh, I can't get these 30 funnels out. He just has adjusted his system so he only gets 1 or 2 out when he needs to, but they are really, really well done, when they hit the finish line. So I don't know if that helps a lot in terms of advice, but that's kind of how I think about stuff like that. Not every little thing that you do has to be done all the time.
I love that. And a big takeaway, and I want to say two things. One is your friend, if he's able to get his funnel out ultimately, or funnels, and have success with them and drive action, and he enjoys the process, right? If that's his
Exactly right.
process, that's what gives him fulfillment. He loves the nittiest, grittiest of the pixel, right? And it is optimized for mobile, for every screen, ready to go. God bless, right?
Yep. He's the restaurant owner that is also the head chef that's in the kitchen. Like he just loves the making of food so much. Like he loves the marketing so much which is awesome. That it fits for him because it works.
Yeah, I love that. The next thought was, we were talking about MVP, minimum viable product to test, to get something out there to see if it's worth pressing on with. It's almost, we're literally just saying the same thing and just applying that to content. What's the minimum viable product for the content? like you said, it's the bumper, it's this font. Other than that, we got to start testing and trying content to see if it works, and test in smaller test markets or things like that. I think with social media is where people get in their head. They're like, well, if I start pumping this content out, the whole world's going to see it. But in reality, most of us don't have the whole world as the audience.
Then you realize how much the whole world doesn't care and has other things to do.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just trying to get eyeballs to these things now. You realize that's the actual issue. You need to get that attention, which kind
Oh
of
my
causes the whole
gosh.
thing. I'll tell you
Yeah.
the other thing that your friend could use is templates. If he's not, is that's the
Yeah.
other thing to do is highly templatized things. Like we
Yeah.
have builder decks for our slide decks, and all the instructors will go in. They copy that builder deck, whether they're doing a workshop, a quick start course, or a full length course. They have builder decks for each one of them, so they all follow a similar pattern. And 80% of the prep work is already done. It's kind of like it's what we call momentum pre-installed. Like all the
Mm.
things that's coming to you is already in motion, so it's easier to keep it going. And templates are a great way to do that too.
Tell me really quick, if you could, and everybody listening, watching, you can go to measureu.com. That's measureu.com and follow along with some of the things that Mercer and I are talking about here. The headline you've got on your homepage there is optimize your marketing using measurement so you can increase your profits and drive better and deliver better results. There's things like no more guessing, where vision meets action, filter out the noise, great stuff like that. And we'll get into all that. But before we do, because we're just kind of going down this train of thought, and you've got me thinking about delegating and creating these builder decks and team and who could even create the builder decks. And tell me about your business structure and how do you delegate and what are you finding that's working, not working? And
So a good question. It's myself and my partner Jeff Sauer, who used to. Some people may be familiar with his brands. DataDrivenU.com was one of his major brands. Before that, Jeff Analytics. We were actually competitors back in the day, and recently, this past year, combined them in partnership, and that's where we've combined those two companies into what is now Measure U. So he had a team, and we had an existing team, and those teams are now merged to where we're about, I think it's 14 people. At this point, with some full-time W-2s in the U.S., otherwise contractors around the world where you have to do that. So it works out pretty well. But we run two brands. One of them is Measure U. The other one is at profitschool.com, where we're teaching business owners how to basically use systems to learn how to manage teams. Because a lot of small business owners were really good at the thing they learned to do, and then all of a sudden they were also an owner. It's because now you have a contractor and then you have a couple of team members. And then you have to realize like, wow, I have to learn how to be a boss and manage and motivate. And just and where is that in the manual when they told me how to build a WordPress site? It didn't come with that, So it's like, okay, we got to figure this out. So that's where Profit School exists to solve two different problems. So Measure U is all about how to use measurement to measure the behaviors on the site. And this is how we think about this. Just like you and I are having a conversation, and you're going to change what you say based on what I say and vice versa, right? Listening and responding is all we're doing. The same thing happens on websites right now. So on Measure U, there are users there that are having a conversation. In fact, I'd venture to say they actually hear the words in their head when they read the page, and they're going through and they're having this conversation with the website. So the problem we have as business owners, as marketers, is what's that conversation? If I was having a conversation with you and you came in with some sort of objection, I would be able to answer it because I know I'm aware of it and I'm in a conversation with you so that I can adjust and move on, right? With the regular websites, you can't, at least it feels like you can't get feedback from what the users are doing. You just put a bunch of users in other words, send a bunch of traffic, and then you hope that traffic converted into sales. But if you don't see the sales, then you go, well, what happened? And that's where measurement comes in. So measurement is listening to their side of the conversation. And that's how digital marketers can do that. So we can listen to the user side of the conversation. Again, very real conversation happening between the website and the users. Measurement, and the better we get at measurement, is like listening to all the behaviors that the users are doing on the site and then inferring the conversation from that. So if, for example, if I come to let's say send traffic to an offer page and they mostly bounce, let's say 80% of them are leaving within 10 seconds. You can very specifically measure for that behavior. If 80% are leaving within 10 seconds, I already know it has nothing to do with the offer or the price. It has everything to do with the way that the traffic was initially set up to come to that page. Because what's happening is the traffic is sending them, they're arriving, they're going, I don't know what this is, and they're leaving. And it's an above the fold problem. So either there's something wrong with the headline or that main image. A simple thing that might create this is an ad that says sweaters on sale, and then you send them to a page where it shows tires on sale. And they're like, well, there's a disconnect. I wasn't here for tires, so I'm going to leave, right? I'm not going to try to scroll down to the part where you talked about sweaters. I'm just going to leave because you didn't match my expectation. And that's the beauty of measurement. You can see that. And when you see that in the numbers, you're like, okay, we're not matching expectation. Hey, marketing team. Hey, copywriters, let's focus on the above the fold and better match the expectation and maybe change the ad so they better set up the expectation that should be received, you know? And what I like about that is it's where measurements start, your users are literally telling you what to do to improve the results for them, which ultimately improves the results for you. And it makes it a win-win because they're saying, hey, if we want to buy your thing, we just can't do it because the conversation goes south, right? The website's not helping them do it. So they'll help you by saying, another example might be somebody comes to an offer page. They do stay 10 seconds. They actually scroll down. Let's pretend it's long form copy. They scroll down. They look at the pricing table for 10 seconds in the viewable browser window. You can measure for all these behaviors, but they just don't click. They don't go to the cart. What they're telling you is, hey, I checked out your stuff. I just don't think it's worth what you're asking for it. So I didn't continue. But that's a good thing for us to know. Now, does that mean we have to lower our prices? Maybe. What I would try to swing for is how do we change the copy so that messaging is more value based? So it really promotes the value. So when they see the price, they go, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. I'm absolutely going to go to the cart and get this thing. But you don't know what to do if you're not measuring for it. And if you're not measuring, you're just not listening to the user side of the conversation. And I think as marketers and as business owners, we don't have that as a luxury anymore. You have to listen to their side of the conversation because that's how you adjust your marketing. That's our side of the conversation, right? We get to adjust that stuff to keep the conversation going in the right direction.
I, I love that. I've got about 15 thoughts going on right now. The first one I want to know is, are you providing copy feedback with what you do, or funnel structure feedback, or those services, right? Someone's got a funnel and they're like, hey man, I'm driving all this traffic. They come to you and they go, let's optimize this. Is that how the
Yeah.
conversation starts?
Yeah, it can. I mean, typically we try to train companies how to do this because I believe they should have the muscle in house. Like the more measurement muscle you have in your own organization, the better, stronger, faster you will be as a company, period. Like that's going to be the company of the future is one that understands how to measure for sure. That said, there are companies who just don't have the staff on their teams maybe, and they need to hire outsource muscle, right? And so they could hire us to do that or hire some of our students to do that. But that is very similar to the conversation they would do if that was the case, whether it's in-house or if they're hiring us as external. That is essentially what's going on. The difference on what a sort of a measurement marketer, if we want to call them that, what the measurement marketer would do is say, there's an above the fold issue. It's headline, lead copy, maybe this image, some ideas for you, but they're not going to say, here's the 15 different headlines we should test because they may not be completely trained in copy. Now, if they are, I would totally have them do that. But if that's not their background, they're just guessing too. I would rather have a copywriter look at it, right? Or somebody that understands persuasion to set that sort of messaging and actually make those suggestions. But the measurement marketer is the person who can say, okay, I need to point the resources in the right direction, right? Because if you think about the alternative that most companies go through, it's I spent a bunch of money on Facebook last week. And everybody goes, what happened to that money we spent on Facebook last week? And people, I don't know, they just kept it. And they go, well, what do we change? And then somebody goes, well, I was at this mastermind event and they think we should do a webinar. And somebody else goes, yeah, but I just bought this course and they think we should do a VSL. And somebody else says, yeah, long form copies. Somebody else says, no, it's short form copy we need to do. Who's right? And the answer is anybody and nobody, probably. So everyone's just professionally guessing, right? I think Dan Kennedy coined it where he said it was like random acts of marketing. This is what happens everywhere. I can't stand random acts of marketing. There's too much drama in that. So what we do is we go to the report, right? The measurement report, and it'll say, and we basically here's how we use our measurement. We'll listen to the conversation. That's literally the first step of this. We call it the launch step. But the first key to this is you listen to the conversation. So you're looking at trends and patterns, right? I expected a 30 to 35% opt-in rate for this new offer we are promoting through Facebook. Did we get that? Did it match its forecasts? And if it did, awesome, let's scale. But if it didn't, if it's substantially lower, what were we going to do? Well, we already had a plan to say, well, if it's lower, we're going to go look at the Facebook traffic and make sure the ads are still working. Because if the ads get a high click-through rate, that goes back to minimal viable engagement. If we want to keep dealing with that pattern, the customers there on Facebook are saying, yeah, I'm interested, right? Because they're clicking on those ads. But if the site's not keeping them interested, I would say, okay, well, it's probably, if the ad copy is good and we really like what that's saying, and they like it because they're clicking, then we have got to move it over to the site and say, okay, the site is what's dropping the ball. Now let's focus on what area of the site. If they're leaving within 10 seconds, it's top of fold, no matter what. That's what it is. The mismatch was there. It was so apparent. They didn't even think, they just left. If it's the opposite problem where they're scrolling all the way down to the bottom and they're doing all these engagement behaviors and they're seeing the pitch and they're considering the offer, but they're just not clicking on the button, then I would say it's a value problem. We're not building enough value for them to go, well, this is an obvious no-brainer, right? So what can you do? If it's above the fold problem, we know it's just above the fold. It's headline, it's image, it's something that didn't quite match. Try to get it closer to what the ad says. That will at least fix that problem. Then they will engage in the rest of the messaging. If it's a value problem, we would look for things like, where did we say features? Because sometimes, especially as owners and as marketers, we're so close to we're in the forest, right? So we just see the trees. And so we describe our products and services for exactly what they are, but that tends to be feature based, right? Like, we have 743 hours of video. And it's like, that's great, but not particular. Like, half the people go, that's an objection now, right? I don't have that much time to watch all these videos, But when you say, oh, no, it's not 743 hours of video, it's just in time learning platforms. No matter what you need is ready at your fingertips when you need it. Same thing described two completely different ways. One's a feature, one's more of the benefit side of that. And so we would look for the copy. Okay, where can we build more value in what the copy says to get them to engage? Because if we are doing that, they will click to go to the cart because that makes sense. If they're not doing that, they won't click to go to the cart because they're telling us, I appreciate how you thought it was going to make sense, but it's not. So please try again. And we can either sit there and argue with them, which is always going to make you poorer, quite literally, So you just argue like, yeah, you should figure out my copy. It's like, no, they're never going to. So we just try to bend to their will. We let the market stay in charge. But that's how we use measurement. Measurement sort of, we always have limited time, effort, and money, right? When it comes to where we can dedicate our resources. Measurement helps you at least say, if not, this is the thing, somewhere around here is where you should be to move the needle. And that's what most business owners and marketers are looking for. They want that edge of, where do I start? Am I building a whole new funnel? Am I just fixing the headline? It's everywhere in between for most people. But when you measure, it says, okay, this one's above the fold, or this one's more like you got to do a different, offer play or something like that.
I love that. I'm thinking, the measurement too, it allows you to give you an objective viewpoint so you can speak to the data versus wishful thinking or
Exactly.
accidental marketing or whatever Dan Kennedy said. What
Yeah,
did you say?
the random acts of marketing. Yes,
Random, random,
exactly. Yep.
yeah. Or is pragmatic another word you could use? It's like we can get as philosophical as we want, but the reality of the situation is that here's what the numbers say, so let's adjust accordingly. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm when we say it's an above the fold problem, I'm thinking too perhaps the ad needs to be tweaked. So maybe you're going, hey,
could
we
be.
we have ad above the fold mismatch here. We love the above the fold. Why don't we try tweaking the ad copy? Are you
Yep.
doing that type of a thing
Absolutely.
too?
And that's where it goes back. Well, how would you know that? Right. And this is from a measurement perspective, is how you think about it. You go, well, how would we know if the ad wasn't performing well? Wouldn't be getting clicks. Right. So if they're clicking on the ad, they are saying, at this point, when I'm on Facebook, right, or wherever, Instagram, whatever it is,
Yeah.
I'm interested enough to click and leave this platform. And then they arrived, and that's when it hit the fan, right? And it left.
Yes.
If that's the case, this traffic source could have set them up for the wrong expectation. Again, go back to the simple example of sweaters and tires. The
Yeah.
ad said sweaters on sale for 20%. They
Yeah.
come over and somebody put the banner image of tires, because you sell tires and sweaters for some reason. And that's what they see. And they go, well, that's not what I wanted. So the ad was correct because it's getting click through. So I wouldn't tweak the ad, because that's telling me, oh, we're trying to sell sweaters. We just
Yeah.
mismatched it on the other side. So let's get
Yeah.
them to a page that shows sweaters and 20% off, just like the ad says 20% off. So there's
Yeah.
an instant match, because the market, I always think about the market like a skittish little animal. And I'm not trying to be derogatory to anybody. This is how we all are. we're always looking for a reason to get out of wherever we are for the most part. I need a reason to get off this podcast right now. That's what's going on in my brain, right? My reptilian brain is going, this could be danger. This could be danger. This could be danger. That's what it's doing. And it's always, and then it's always trying to get me to say, okay, maybe I could eat this. Like it's trying, how can I feed myself with this, right? Or how can I help this multiply more human species? That's what the reptilian brain is. That's the core code. It's always one of those three things, right? That we're doing. So that drives every other of the billion different actions that we do as humans. So I try to always think about that core code. So when somebody's coming to the site, they're coming with this intention that they think it's going to be beneficial for them, because why else would they have made that previous click to come over, right? So they think that, and they're subconsciously looking, not most people are not objectively looking, but subconsciously they are looking for reason to leave. Our job as marketers is to not give them that reason. I was having a really good friend of mine who was at a conference I was at as a marketing conference. He's a big automation systems guy, not a marketer. So he's sitting there and he's talking. We saw some speaker, and the speaker was going through some things, and he had like upsells and downsells and all this stuff. And he comes back, and I was giving him a ride back, and he was like, "Man," he's like, "all these dark patterns that you marketers are into is I would never fall for that." And I was like, I said, I totally hear you. I said, really good marketing you can't see. Really good marketing cannot be seen. It just makes sense. You just take the action because it makes sense to take the action. But marketing and sales is what did that always. And I told him, I was like, you can see it because you're not the market. But I guarantee you, when you bought all your server stuff, there were upsells and downsells and add-ons. All those same patterns were there. But for you at the time, because you were in that market, it just made sense to do it. Right? You're like, yes, I would like to add extra memory. Yes, I would like to do that. That's exactly the same thing. So I told him, I was like, if you're don't crap on the marketers. I'm telling you, it's everywhere. It's just how it's done. Everyone does it everywhere for everything. It's just a matter of if you can see it. So the trick as a marketer is not to, I don't want to make like you're hiding the marketing. You're not, but it is kind of like, if you can see this marketing, it'll come across as manipulative, because that skittish animal, reptilian brain inside of us is going, danger, they're trying to manipulate me. This probably is not for a good thing. Because most of the time, based on our genetic history, when things were manipulating us into different positions we didn't want to go in, it was because we were probably being eaten. Not a great thing, right? It's like, it was a bad result. I don't want to do that again. So the reptilian brain is always trying to protect us. So we make it so that the reptilian brain doesn't have anything. It just matches the expectation to the extent that you can match those expectations. In fact, it's one of the things we call it the expectation engine, because if you can match the offer, let's say traffic ad, and it matches the offer page, matches the expectation of the ad, they engage with the offer page, they're going to click to go to the cart. That cart has to match their expectation, has to, or they won't go through the cart. Right. So if I click to the cart and it takes a half a second, and then it gives me one of those Google warnings because I didn't have my certificate correct for SSL, that immediately reptilian brain kicks in and goes, nope, not now, leaving. Right. Unless the offer is just amazing. Right. That's something that might cause that. But that's how we think about it. In fact, very true story of how we use measurement to optimize one of our funnels. This happened years ago. We measure our user journeys, right? Funnels, sales funnels, whatever you want to call them. Step one was the offer. Step two was the cart. Step three was the thank you page. On step one, we expect 8 to 12% to go from step one to step two. So 8 to 12% of the people that see this particular offer should be going to the cart. Half of those people should complete for an average ticket of whatever it was to create the revenue that we're going to get. This is how we manage our projections. And we're always planning out how it should be working. So next week, we should have 100 people see this page. Of those, 10 should go to the cart. Of those, 5 should buy for $100. That's how we're going to make $500 next week. So we have a plan for that, and then we measure against it, right? So we measure all those steps to see if it's working the way it's supposed to. Well, at one point, somebody, and this was way back in the early days when mobile was finally taken over, and people were like, "Oh, we should be. What's it look like a mobile?" We were like, "Oh, it doesn't look great." So somebody went in there very quickly, started hacking it away to try to make it look good on mobile. We're like, "We fixed it. It looks great now. Awesome. Everyone's happy with it." Fast forward a few days. This is key. It takes a few days. We learned this very, very quickly, and we fixed it very, very quickly, which is what I like about measurement. This wasn't like a month-long problem. This is a real quick. Within the week, we fixed it. We look at our reports. 8 to 12% isn't what's happening anymore. It was about 10%, let's say on average, would go to the cart. But now we see 40% going to the cart. So at the first thing marketing team does, hey, pat ourselves on the back. We changed so much stuff, 40% go to the cart. I'm like, that's awesome. What's the next step? So we go to the cart. 50% should be going through the cart. But now only 10% are going through the cart. So we had this 90% abandonment rate. So then I said, okay, this is not bad. This is the market telling us that's the reptilian brain clicking in, going, doesn't match expectation, I'm out. Or they didn't have the right expectation to begin with. So what we said is, okay, the numbers are telling us that people are going to the cart because there's so many people going to the cart. They're going to the cart without the expectation of buying. They're going for some other reason. They're going to find an answer to a question that offer page created, and they're hoping the cart can answer. So when we did that, we just saw that with the numbers. We had made that decision. So we pre-framed ourselves for that. Then the marketing team went back and looked at the page, and they realized to their horror, and again, this goes back for forest and the trees. Sometimes we're just too close to the problem to see it. They realized when they were hiding elements, moving stuff around to make things mobile friendly, they hid the price. So people had to go to the cart to find out how much it was. Then they were looping back to say, okay, well, now they know how much it is. Let me go see if it's worth it. Right. And we absolutely saw that behavior. And then it happened like that. It was instant. So we're like, and they saw it. They were like, oh my gosh, it wasn't some weird marketer's trick to get them to go to the cart, because the more people go to the cart, more people buy, because that's silly. I mean, they just growing too fast. So they saw it, they corrected it, everything comes back in line within a day. Traffic comes through, everything goes back 10%, 50%, we're back to normal. So that's how measurement can help guide marketing actions, but they have to be using measurement, just like you would use your car dashboard when you drive. People think dashboards have to be complicated data tables. They don't. They should be like your car dashboard. Just like you see how fast you're going, do I hit the brake or hit the gas? You don't have to think about it. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to go, well, it's a sunny day and it's a Wednesday and it's a 2 p.m. And so most people at Wednesdays at 2 p.m. are driving 37. You don't think like that. Like, my gosh, who wants to do that? Marketers certainly don't have the attention span for it. So if you make your marketer's dashboard like your car dashboard, where you just kind of get in and get out and get back to work, it works amazingly well. And measurement can absolutely help us to do that. So that's how we use measurement to optimize, or some examples of it.
I love it. So quick, walk me through. So give me a vision, the perfect customer. How do they find you? What are you doing for them in regards to measureyou.com? So does that question make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So our kind of the main person that's coming to measure you, we have different levels, and this is where I could say, like, the future of marketing, I'm firmly believe in, is community based marketing. So anybody that wants to learn how to improve the results they're getting with their marketing efforts digitally is a customer for Measure You at some level. So Measure You starts with a free community, so anybody can join. You're a single solopreneur or freelancer, you want to learn a little bit about this stuff, you can go there, you can create a free account to go into the community. The community gives you access to, you got your chat room, whether the posts and everything else, that people are back there, asking questions, getting help with some stuff, seeing different updates. There's a training calendar, the way we do live training, that we will give out to some of the community members. We can talk more about that, as how we produce that product, a little bit later if you want. So we do that for them. There's resources and toolbox that is unlocked with like 75 different resources for measurement, training, and tools and everything else that we feature on a YouTube channel. They can get for free there, and so forth and so on. So that community feature is perfect for that person who's in the market who isn't quite sure if they want to risk the amount of buying a lifetime membership yet, but they want to get a taste, and we wanted to deliver usefulness to them. Because if we can make the product useful for free, at a certain point, a certain percentage of those, roughly 10%, will become buyers in some way, shape, or form. So now we have a nice top of funnel where we've got the community for the free level. Then there are the people who are like, okay, I need to really understand how to use these tools. I want to learn the frameworks behind them, the strategies behind them, get deep dive, have access to all the courses, and be able to ask questions about all the different tools that are out there, right? Google Analytics to Microsoft Clarity to everything that exists in the world of measurement. So they can do that. It's a couple grand is what we call it for the Academy Insiders, right? Actually, about $3,000, I think, now. But for Academy Insiders lifetime membership, we get them lifetime access to all the courses and all the updates practically forever. Same thing with support, lifetime support. So you pay one time, and then you have access to all of that. Now, the reason we did that as a marketing team is because we wanted to avoid the difficult offer of recurring, because recurring is harder and harder to sell with time, right? Nobody likes subscription payments. There's lots of apps that are like, we'll help you and your subscription payments, right? So it's like we're starting to see that on the wall. So like, let's try to avoid that. We'll just make lifetime access and call it a day. But there are still people in the market, right? So we have people that are free community that just want to kind of do it on their own, and they got plenty of time and no money. That's fine. Play with the community, grow your skills. Our job is to help you grow your skills so your companies are big enough so that you can afford then the next natural level, which would be maybe the Academy Insiders. You get access to all the courses and support. But there are going to be people, and there are, who say, yeah, that's great, but I really want to talk to somebody. I want to be on group coaching calls. I want a little more hand holding. So we have another level called the Accelerator. So then we have that as our third tier of membership, if you want to call it that. So the accelerator, which, 6 or 7 grand a year, so you're a higher price point now, and it's a limited access. So it's not a recurring thing, but it is like 12 months of access too. And then if you want it again, then you can renew for another year, but it's all, manually renewing. But the accelerator gives you the measurement mastermind weekly group coaching calls, right? It gives you measure sprints where we take groups of people that want to go learn this stuff and we walk them through a 13-week cycle so everybody can learn their skills together and get help. It gives you access to all the live trainings. When we do live course updates, we train them live in front of our Measure You audiences. And then that's how we update the courses for our lifetime members, right? So that gives them access to the front of the table so they can ask questions. So a lot more handholding at that point. So we've got the free community, people that don't have money but have plenty of time. And I think all marketers, all businesses should have products that match these levels. You need people that are free but don't have time. They have time but not money, but they might in the future. So give them a place to nurture. Then you've got the in our case, the lifetime access for a few grand. Then you've got the higher level, higher touch access where humans are definitely involved now. Human as a service is going to make a comeback after AI takes over the world. So we'll have humans helping them out with actual instructors they can talk to and get help with, which is awesome. And then there's that final level of person who's like, I get all that. I think it's amazing. Just please do it for me. Like, I don't want to learn all this stuff. I don't want my team to do this stuff. Just you guys do it. And that's what we call it. At that point, we call that, there's two ways we can do that. One is embedded support, where we have and that's 20 grand a year, where we have like, let's say you were an owner of a larger company. You would say, I want my marketing team to go through this. You buy it. The marketing team has to go through it. We make sure they go through all the steps and processes. So you're sort of outsourcing the training to us to handle for them. And then there's the ultimate one, which is what we call dedicated measurement management, which is where we are doing exactly this. We're setting up all the measurement. We're working with you on calls. We're helping interpret the reports. We're giving you direction on where we think marketing should go, right? We're going to help the best we can with some marketing advice, but we're not copywriters. So we're not going to take that over or threaten anybody on the marketing side, but we are helping them focus their resources a little bit better, hopefully. And that's something where now you're at 100, 150 grand a year. So you've got these free all the way up to 150,000 a year. And the reason we did that was because when people ask us, well, who's perfect for Measure You? The short answer is, well, anybody in digital marketing. But that's not a great avatar. But each product level has its own avatar and stair steps for it. Because there's going to be a certain number of people who are like 150 grand, easy, because it would cost me 250,000 just to hire somebody that knows this stuff. So I'll totally do that and have a team of people do it for me. That makes sense for a certain type of people. Others, I'm good with just the community and can do that. And if that's helpful, awesome. Be an active member of the community. That's good for us too.
You're,
And
you're
everybody in between.
you probably have agencies taking advantage of this.
A lot of agencies.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of agencies. Yeah, and it really is that we have literally corporate America that's done that. We've got agencies that do that because they have clients, and then we've got smaller businesses that do it in house that are doing it. So we have all three groups
Yeah.
that would go through.
You had said a couple interesting things. One, community-based marketing is where all this is going.
I
So
firmly
give
believe
me
that.
give me 1 or 2 minutes on that. What do you specifically mean when you say that?
So I'm a big trends and patterns guy because if you get, it goes with the Wayne Gretzky quote, right? Skate to where the puck is going, you're gonna have a better game. So it's like we're always trying to skate to where the puck is going, not where it was last week, because who cares? Last week just informs us where it might be next week, and that's why I'm looking for that. I look at last week so I can tell where it might be next week. That's what I'm constantly doing with trends and patterns. I see what's going on with social media, and it's like, who here loves social media? No one, but they do it every day. That will not last forever because humans are going to code themselves differently. They'll start reacting differently to it, and they'll realize that, oh, I don't need to go this behemoth group anymore that isn't individual because I have this other group that is more relevant, right? And so you start having groups that leave Facebook, and the groups have already started to do this. This is not new, right? This has happened in the last 10 years, where the groups used to be super organic, and now you have to pay to play, and now even that doesn't work, and now everyone wants off of Facebook or wherever the latest thing is. I know it's TikTok now; it won't be in the future. It'll be something else. But the point of that is this one size fits all social network versus let's say a social network that was just for those who really want to understand how to use measurement to improve their marketing, right? That is the exact same thing, but it's called community in that world. It's not called social network. Same exact thing. It's just they have a feed, they have all the stuff, they have all the things they can play. It's exactly the same, just different words. But that's what it is. And that's why I think that pattern works. Because if I can make a social network more relevant for you, you're going to use it more often. So we treat that community like a social network. We get everybody back there. Everybody knows each other. Instructors know students by name and vice versa. Everybody hangs out in the calls and has fun. It's like a family. And that's the whole point of what social media was supposed to be, the original social media. The problem is if everybody starts screaming about everything in Measure U, it would quickly devolve and not be useful for anybody because it would be the lowest common denominator, attention seekers, what's going to get the traffic. That's what all the social media networks are eventually devolving into because they won't figure out how to get out of that. But if you can take your community and say, I'm going to do a community of podcasts, people that have podcasts that want to learn how to grow their podcast, and we're just going to do a community for those, but we do it exceptionally well. We've got the best instructors, the best content. We're constantly putting the freshest stuff out there. And by the way, you don't have to trust me. You can just join for free. There's very limited risk. And so you can come in, join for free. Worst case, you leave. Best case, they go, wow, you're actually right. That's pretty cool. And then they see that locked course that's in the community. And they go, wow, if the free stuff is this good, like for example, we're with the communities because it gives you an asset as well from a marketing perspective. Like your email list is an asset. So is your number of active community members, two different touch points now that you have as a brand. So in the in the community aspect, we give them access to the training calendar so they can see all the training that's happening. Do they have access to all that training? Nope. They have access to some of it, not all of it. A lot of it says, here's the cool training we're doing. And they go to click to it and it goes, oh, you don't have access to this space. You need to upgrade. Right. And it teaches them how to send them an offer page to upgrade. But in the community itself, we do free training. This is how you can get away with free training. And this is a powerful technique with us for those that can use it. We train for free. We do not give the replays out to the community because we're training for free. We're recording them for actual courses that we're selling. In fact, this is how those that are astute marketers listening to this call went, wow, he's got a free platform and then he goes up to $2,000. There seems like there's a missing price point. There's no low ticket. And you would be right. However, hopefully when this podcast comes out, you will see that we now have a low ticket called Quick Starts. So we're producing these $47 Quick Start courses because we have a need for that. The market has asked us for that, which I love when the market just tells you what to do and you're like, cool, I'll just do that. So we're producing these $47 courses for them. But the way we're doing that is we're teaching it for free to the community members that can show up. So if you've got the time and you want to show up at 3 a.m. your time, if that happens to be the case, you can totally ask the instructors, get all the help and do everything for free. It's a good value for you still. And we have the recording now that we can go to the editor, edit it down, make it a course, brand it, do the Zoom effects and all the stuff that the courses get, and then sell that as a finished product. So we have taken care of the community while we are simultaneously building out another section for that community when they want to ascend to that. And that's what I love about kind of the systems and organization of stuff specific to communities. A lot of what you do in one part of the community affects other parts, which is pretty useful.
I love that. It's great. Teaching
Who knows if it's
content.
right, but at least it's a theory, right?
Yeah, it's a theory.
I'm always open to being wrong. I'm always like most current truth is my favorite saying. It's like it's the most. I'll never lie, but I'll give you the most current truth. Tomorrow, you give me more data, I might say something. Yeah, never mind. I don't say that. I think like this now, but it's because the data changed.
Yeah, branding is going to get more important.
Yes.
What did you say? Branding is going to get more important than less as we move forward,
Yes.
especially with the advent of AI. So speak to that for 2 or 3 minutes.
So I was on what's happening with AI, and this is something again. This is always going to be most current truth. Kind of we have that phrase out there. The way the AI generally works, it's a word calculator. So it's all probabilities thereof, right? It's going to go to the probability that this word matches this word, and then it gives you the answer. So it's all based on what it thinks most people are saying most of the time, or what most of its data says most of the time, which means it's commodified. It's generic stuff to some extent, depending how you prompt it. I realize there's some exceptions to rules. But generally speaking, it's just mimicking what's already out there over and over and over again. But if it's doing that, it's mimicking it over and over and over again. How can you tell the difference between what Coca-Cola's AI bot says and what Pepsi's AI bot says when they talk about soda? Because both AI bots are just going to be, if it was generic, it's just soda brand to soda brand, they would both say basically the same thing. But if you're a Coca-Cola person and it's under the Coca-Cola brand, it should be that brand is going to have a trust factor. So when it says, hey, don't drink this other guy's soda because it'll hurt you for these reasons, I'll believe it more because Coca-Cola would never lie. Right. So
Yep.
because there's a brand associated to the words through the AI. If it's just generic AI, like I go to ChatGPT and find out like how do I improve my Google Analytics stuff? I promise you're going to see what most of the blog posts say about Google Analytics. And what I love about AI is it's supremely confident, often wrong, right? But confident every time. So you go through and it tells you, oh, here's how you use the tools of Google Analytics 4. It's not necessarily wrong, but it's also not the most helpful answer because our company would not exist because we did a huge zag on how we think about Google Analytics and it unlocked the tool for our members, which is why we've become so popular. Whereas if you do what everybody does with Google Analytics, which is what AI is going to do, because that's the most data out there. So that's the probability that's the best answer. But that's the same answer that's been being said for the last 30 years. And that's a challenge. So I think when the brand comes out and it says, in fact, we've already started to have this happen. We talk a lot about measurement marketing. The reason we talk about measurement marketing is because I need more information about measurement marketing. So when I can, if I can associate measurement marketing to digital marketing in the AI brain, AI goes, oh, digital marketing, measurement. They're asking about measurement. There's this thing called measurement marketing. Measurement marketing is probably what they're looking for. Let me talk about measurement marketing. And then measurement marketing is a brand in itself because that's not how it's talked about, but it's content everywhere that we have around measurement marketing. That helps give us the private little space for the AI to connect the dots with other things around measurement marketing, including our brand, including our YouTube channel. And we've already had people on comments but like, hey, AI actually sent me here. This is pretty cool. It recommended YouTube channel because they were asking about measurement and marketing. And we had measurement marketing, right? So there's little things you can do to brand. So you want the AI bot because if you're just generic, it's not even going to be a battle. AI is going to do everything. AI won't even think to bring them to your brand. The customer won't even look for your brand. It won't matter because AI is going to solve their problem. But when AI is basically getting you to a point and says, listen, I can get you to this level, but you really should understand this measurement marketing thing. Go over here. That's I mean, I'm almost trying to figure out how in the way that we're building it, how do I get AI to be my best affiliate, right? And never have to be paid. Hopefully, at least for now. I'm sure they'll figure out a way to do pay per play for AI too. I'm sure that's coming. But I like that idea of like, how do I get AI to recommend my stuff? I cannot talk about it like everybody else is talking about, or else AI can't tell the difference. It's very similar to how SEO works with Google, right? You have to separate yourself out and have a certain authority, and that's how Google starts ranking. But back in the day, that's not what they were doing. They were just basing off clicks. How many comments did you have? And clicks that went to this. That's all they did. Well, AI is in its early stages of how does it know if it's right or not? It can't figure that out yet. It will, but not yet. So if I can get it to speak about certain things and associate certain things with certain types of content and tweaking how I say it and making sure it's always like measure you's guide to measurement marketing, measure you, measure you, measure you, measure you. So it's got the brand information. So the AI is coming out and saying, hey, here's what this brand is saying. And now you've got the brand of Measure You saying, here's how you should use Google Analytics. It's going to come across different than some AI bot saying you should use Google Analytics like this. It just Measure You. The brands have a shortcut to trust. I think that's important.
I love that, and I like how you're. Well, I'm amazed. I just had this. My brain just a. It's like talk about the common language, put your own language on it, create your own terminology around it,
Building a bridge. Yeah.
make that connection, and then AI, yep, build that bridge, and then AI is going to start doing it and start saying, "Hey, there's this thing
And
called
this is
measurement."
what I mean by branding. I think when people think branding, it's kind of like similar conversation when we first started. They think logo, colors, fonts, all important parts of a brand. Branding is also what you call things. Like we call our thing the Academy Insiders, right? We have courses, but they're called win courses, right? So it's a specific brand. We have the Measure Mastermind. We have Measure Sprints, right? We've got Measure Live when we teach. These are all brands within the brand where we're branding everything. We teach measurement marketing at Measure You. That's also a brand. So we have all of this different type of brands within brands that are a certain language. And that's kind of what a brand is. It's like a little condensed language. And if I can get that into the AI bot and it understands, and its only place it's going to get that data is us. So if it at all gets anywhere near that network of words, it's our recommendation, you know? And that's what makes it a brand. And then somebody else has to say, oh, well, we also teach measurement marketing because that's going to happen. Somebody else is going to say, oh, we also do this because that's what, when you have a good niche, people are going to come in and try to compete for it. That's going to happen. But then now we have the head start. We got more content, more authority, right? And they're doing it. It's always a cat and mouse game. But at least I think that's kind of where things are headed and why. And that's why I'm really a big believer in branding everything you can as a marketer, coming up with that unique way of describing your thing that separates you out, that isn't generic, that you're the one that calls it this. And that's where they can get this special little sauce.
I love it, and it's actually how to give your product what does Russell Brunson call it? A new opportunity.
Yeah.
You're just creating new languaging around what's already out there, or a different angle or perspective or lens.
Yeah. I'll tell you on that note, I don't know if you know a copywriter named David Deutsch, incredible copywriter. Like he's one of these old school copywriters, been around for a while since the days of direct mail, right? So really knows his stuff. We were having a chat at one point very recently, and this is part of the reason that headline says what it says on our site, because he used to say like, no, what's working, what's not, and what to do next, right? Use measurement to know all this stuff, and then we did that for years. To be honest, it kind of helped us get started and everything. And he contacted us because he thought we did conversion rate optimization, right? Otherwise known as CRO, like split testing and stuff like that. And we're going through and I'm talking about stuff and I'm sharing. He's like, well, tell me exactly what you're doing because you don't do split testing. I was like, well, here's how we use it. And I was showing some of the reports and he goes, oh, he goes, you do optimization. You just use measurement to optimize. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what we do. And literally I'm like writing that down. I'm like, that's our new headline because he gave me a new way to have that new opportunity for the market instead of like what's working, what's not, what's next, which is what some people wanted. Everybody else just wants to optimize their marketing, right? They just want better results from the marketing. How do I get that? And it's like, oh yeah, you measure for that because when you understand how to do that, it's like you have literally the marketing machinery. You have your hands on the levers. You know all the levers, and most people just have a black box that has sounds coming out of it, and sometimes money, sometimes just sparks, And they're like, I don't know how to fix it. And our measurement is how you see it and get visibility hands on, so you can fix it. But he gave us that idea, and it was from a copywriter, right? Just to reframe that new opportunity. Here's a new way of looking at the exact same thing in a slightly different way that might give you a lot more usefulness in terms of the actions. I think it was a brilliant lesson. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Love it. And his last name is spelled Doich. David Deutsch. Is that what you said?
Deutsch is Deutsch. I'm doing that from memory. I apologize, David, if I didn't get that correct exactly, but I believe that's the case. Yes, David
Love
Deutsch.
it. How did he find
Yeah.
you? Do you remember how he found you?
He actually found us on LinkedIn. He reached out to me on LinkedIn, which it was a bit embarrassing because I don't really use social media. I'm kind of like, I'm just not big. I've never gotten into it. I use YouTube. I like YouTube because we put content out there, but I just don't do the social media stuff. So I make my appearance on LinkedIn like once a year. And he had messaged me like 4 months prior to my annual, like, I'm going to get in and accept everybody's invite and to do the thing I do, which is not the way to do social media. I realize this. But I knew his name and I'm like, oh my God, man, so sorry. Like, I didn't mean to ignore you. Just email me because this is how I do it. The original social network, was email. So I was like, just email me, we'll get together. And that's how we did it. So it was through social media after ignoring his message for 4 months. So thank you, David, for being willing to be understanding and not feeling like I was ignoring you because that was not the case. Just wasn't
I,
there.
I love it. I'm sending you connect right now, but
Perfect.
I
I'm,
just
I'm
want
gonna
you.
now I'm gonna do it by the end of the year. I'm gonna do my annual. That's perfect. Yeah, I'll get it in there.
Hey, so I'm looking at your LinkedIn. Do you remember what stuck out at him, or did he see you elsewhere and reach out to you via LinkedIn? It sounds
He
it
had
sounds like that. Or go
I
ahead.
think that's what it was. Yeah, he had seen me. I had done a talk. In fact, it was like a webinar kind of training. So I'm really what we call tribal marketing, which again, community marketing, same concept. So similar to what we're doing now. You have a community that you communicate through with a podcast. You could just as equally have a membership site where I'd be doing a free training for your high level mastermind members or whatever right now. So we had done a group that Bryant Kurtz runs called the Boardroom, and David is a part of that group. And I had done a talk years ago. And this is where I love the concept of how long tail things like podcasts are. I think they're very important to have more of those out there. But I did this talk, I want to say it was right around COVID, probably. So 4 or 5 years ago at this point. And he recently saw that. And when he saw that recording years later, that's when he reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, maybe we should talk about stuff because maybe you can help me measure some of how my copywriting is working or not working. And I can be better at tweaking it as I go. And I'm like, absolutely, we can do that. He just thought we did it through split testing. And I'm like, nope, that's inefficient. We do it through measurement because it's faster. And you can sequentially test and get to a better result much, much faster if you know how to measure. So that's what we're
Oh,
currently talking about, creating kind of a project where we can do some case studies for him, and then he can then help us improve our offers with his magical brain. So this is where people just start working together and helping each other out. Good people helping each other. Build good businesses.
I love it. I appreciate that answer. Thank you so much. And I loved what you talk about how the power of speaking into people's groups and those things get posted somewhere and that's lasting long tail content, I believe what you
Yep.
called it, right? Or guest
Yep.
speaking on podcasts like this, long tail content. Someone comes across it, stumbles, and is like, oh, hey, wait a minute, this is genius, or what have you. Which leads me to my next question. So, how do you use podcast guest speaking and your thoughts on it? Tell me
That's
about that.
perfect. I was literally going to want to talk about this next. Talk about like minds. We're aligned right now. So the way we use podcasts, and this, I'll give you a little bit of origin story of why we do podcasts. Then we'll go into how we're using it. So the reason we use podcast is because in Google Analytics, right, with links and stuff, you can use these things called UTM codes, little parameters in the URL that basically identify where the traffic's coming from. So I was on podcast. I'd be on the Digital Marketers podcast or Social Media Examiners podcast or whoever the podcast was, and I UTM everything. And we'll talk more about this because we're doing it with Table Rush too. So everybody that's listening or watching can see it. So what I was doing was just doing it because it was just nice to talk about stuff, and it helps you work out how you teach and get comfortable on camera and all that. And that's why I did them back in the day. It's you just get started to do them to do it because you're not sure what's going to work, so you try everything. But we started noticing, yeah, the big spike in traffic when the podcast came out. But man, a year later, I was still getting traffic from those podcasts, which I would have bet I never would have thought because I don't operate like that. I don't listen to podcasts from 4 years ago, but people do. And it's not that they're listening to the podcast, it's because they're on the blogs. And that's what I underestimated. The podcasts get promoted on blog posts. Blog posts have got everything. So they're not listening to it on their podcast player. They're going to the site and they're scanning it and they go, yeah, and they click over. So the podcast is generating traffic for us. And those links are SEOing to our site. So then I started going, oh, that's a thing. And we could see it because I could see my podcast traffic because I have a little channel called Podcast where I can see podcast traffic is still causing leads from podcasts I did years ago. Some of them would have been 3 or 4 years ago that I still get leads from today. And we saw that and it was like, all right, this is a source that we should use. We honestly haven't figured out paid traffic as well as we probably should have. And so because we either could think, let's go uphill and climb Mount Everest of learning how to do paid traffic, or do this thing of podcasts, which nobody seems to be taking advantage of and is wide open. So that's what we did. So we hired an agency who then went out and got our name out there because we didn't have the infrastructure to go out and reach out to everybody. And between that and then just me being out there, we get more podcast requests. So now I've got both. So then fast forward to how we use them now. So now what we'll do, and I recommend this technique 100 times out of 100 times, at least to start trying this, see if it works for you. I would definitely try it. And we'll do the similar thing with Table Rush. So when you tell me the podcast is ready, we're going to go to our team. We're going to create a bunch of ads that are, let's say it's on Facebook. We're going to target people who love Table Rush. That's all we're going to do. Table Rush, your name, some of your guests, right? We're going to target that audience. And we're just going to tell Facebook, I just need you to show it to them. That's all I want you to do. Show it to them, get them to engage. So if they click on the link or whatever else, we use a great app called Headliner. There's lots of apps that do this. Headliner is also very good though, because it does an image with an audiogram, which is the moving audio thing. So you see motion. So when you're scrolling through the feed, that motion catches the eye and they go, what are they saying? Because then you're triggering fear of missing out. Remember, reptilian brain is what you're talking to. And it's like, could this be dangerous? Could this be useful? I don't know. I have to unmute it and find out, or at least spend a half a second engaging with that post. The second you do that, you are now in what we call on Facebook the off-site brand aware. You are not on the Measure You site, you never have been, but you are aware of our brand on Facebook. So now you get put into a retargeting audience on Facebook. And what starts happening? All of a sudden, Table Rush listeners start seeing, oh, there's this Mercer guy that's on the Digital Marketer podcast. Oh, wait, there's a Mercer guy that's on Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income podcast. Oh, wait, there's another where he's on this other podcast that I haven't heard of, but he's another. Wait, there's another podcast I have, which is there's three more. And it's because you're in that retargeting audience where we're taking the podcast that got the best results from engagement and they're cycling through. So all of a sudden it looks like, right, the impression, again, marketing can't be seen, but all of a sudden seems like everyone cares about measurement right now. Maybe I should too, because this guy's everywhere. But it could be from a podcast they did 4 years ago that you're seeing. And we're sending to at that point, the podcast, the CTAs send to our site. So it's, hey, create your community account would be the call to action. So at that point, the first set of ads, they're designed to get off-site brand awareness, just to get people to engage with the idea that there's a podcast around measurement and they engage in that. Because if they do that, we want to retarget them with more podcasts around measurement. But this time the call to actions aren't engaged with the podcast. I'm literally going to send traffic to your site because that'll be cheaper and easier and then people are going to love it and Facebook won't mind it. But if I keep them on, if they're on Facebook and I retarget them, the second group of people, that's the ones I'm asking to come to my site. So I target that offsite brand aware, and we're trying to get Facebook to make them on-site brand aware. So they click on the link, they come over to Measure You, and hopefully they get the community. If they don't, they go into a retargeting email or a retargeting ad. They can say, hey, you haven't done the community access. Here's new community stuff that's back there. Free training for community members. Create your account now, because they are now familiar with it. So it makes sense. Where it would not make sense for me just randomly target strangers on Facebook and tell Facebook, go gather people you think this ad would be. I know they are, because I know what was said in the podcast. I know the messaging. I know the avatar. I can't not know the avatar. All my team knows the avatar, because we say, like all podcasts, you say the same things over and over again. A lot of times, it's kind of the beauty of them, in slightly different ways, but a lot of times you cover the core concepts. So everybody understands who they're talking to. The ads are better. The ads are more relevant. The offer pages are more dialed in, and it's simple. I don't know that it's going to work forever, but it absolutely works now, because especially those first clicks, you're getting them for pennies on the dollar, especially if you keep them on Facebook, where you tell Facebook, I want them to stay and just engage with the podcast audiogram and get the clip, and just do that. You can get that for pennies on the dollar. Get in the retargeting audience. Now that retargeting audience is getting incredibly relevant information, so they are cheaper clicks. So net, you get cheaper clicks to your site versus blasting it out to everybody and letting the algorithms figure it out. Again, doesn't mean it's going to work forever, but it has worked in the past. We expect it to continue to work for a while in the future. And it's a great way to take advantage of the content everywhere, that you're naturally going to want to do anyway, whether it's webinars, speaking events. We do the same thing when we speak on stages, right? It's the same concept of having that out there. And it promotes the brand. They see Measure You, Measure You, Measure You, Measure You. And that's the idea.
I love it. If I heard you correctly, somebody could go to an interview they recorded 5 years ago, and they could go, hey, there's a cool sound clip in here. Let's
Yeah,
make the audiogram this. And then they could do this process that you're talking about. It doesn't need to be a recent interview. It
that's
just needs
exactly
to be
right.
something that's out there. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
But remember now, the recent one, especially if I'm targeting the Table Rush audience, and obviously it depends upon the podcast and the size and the audience and all that stuff. But if I'm targeting saying, hey, the newest, here's this new Table Rush that just dropped,
Yes.
that audience wants to see the new stuff. So they're going to engage faster. So it'll be cheaper
Okay.
clicks because it's easier for
Okay.
Facebook to do it. So it works faster for the newer stuff, but then you can cycle in the older stuff. And you're doing that to show other people also are talking about this. But because they cycled that first podcast, the one they already were a fan of, now they're open to others talking about the same concept. And what we're testing for is, do they like podcasts or do they like measurement now? Because if they like measurement, they're going to come over to Measure You. If they just want to hear about other cool podcasts, they're going to other people's podcasts. Like whatever, it's fine. Either way, we still win because we get members and students from it.
If I heard you correctly, your number one marketing tool or growth plan, or however you want to say it, is not necessarily paid media. It's speak on something, get on stages, get on stages, get on stages, virtual or actual.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
a podcast is a stage,
Yep.
right? Even if a podcast has 200 listeners, which would be the tiniest of podcasts, have
Yeah.
200 listeners, right? Even 50 listeners. If you put me in the right room with 50 people, like if it's the exact right 50 people, why would you not want to be on that stage? And if I say, well, yeah, I'm gonna do this in a way that you can be on the stage once and forever at the same time. That's a podcast, right? Because you can reuse it over and over and over, because you have the recording, you've got the blog post now, you can put it on YouTube, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. That's the beauty of a podcast. And it's simple, you can do it from the house. You can do it from your office. You don't have to go travel anywhere. So I love podcasts for that. I think it's one of the most underestimated mediums that exist. And the other thing that I think it's a big mega trend that it's going to help with is people are really going to get tired of short takes and hot takes and all this crap that happens that causes all the enragement. They're just going to stop tuning into it because they're going to realize, oh, this has been false clicks, rage clicks is what it's trying to get me to click on stuff. I'm eventually the brain starts going, this is not a signal that makes sense anymore, and it just won't pay attention to it. Long form content will win. And you already see this with you got Joe Rogan with what, 3 hour podcast routinely. What's the guy, Dan Carlin, I think, that does the history podcast, right? 4 hours long. I listen to all of them. It takes
Hardcore
me a
history.
while, but it's, yeah, exactly. I mean, hardcore history. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Long for people will people say, oh no, people don't do it for they forget that. That's just people who can't figure out how to get the behaviors telling you, oh no, the answer is that everybody's got a 5 second attention span. That's why I can't get them to pay attention to my webinar. It's like, no, your webinar actually is not great. That's why they don't pay attention to your webinar. It's not their attention span. Because if it was amazing, if Joe Rogan did your webinar, he would do a 3.5 hour webinar and they'd stick. And
And it would
I
be
know that
epic.
because I've done that. It would be epic. It's
Yeah,
exactly
right.
right. And this is what I don't like about the shortcut excuses people give. Like, oh no, the market's changing. Is it? Humans don't change all that quickly. Like we're hard coded. Like our wiring is hundreds of thousands of years old. It's going to take more than Facebook algorithms to change how our
Oh,
brains rewire. You
we
know?
yeah, and we default back to the baseline. We're constantly defaulting back to the baseline or merging
Exactly
back to
right.
the baseline or the medium or however you want to say it. So we get these outlier spikes and then we just kind of come back to the baseline.
Yep.
Do you Catherine Jones is this great lady, and she had it's like a funnel design school. So she got her start in funnel design, and she taught people how to do funnel design for conversions and things like that. And now she's partnered up with Russell Brunson. She's taken over his, I believe, what was called the Funnel Builder Certification Program, and he brought her into the fold to take that over. The reason I know that is because I'm in all this stuff, right? And I hopefully I'm not breaking some news, Russell or Catherine. Sorry, but whatever.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise. Um, but anyway, so Catherine is great about she talks about getting on people's stages as a way to grow your business and
Yep.
affiliate opportunities and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Which I love. But she talks about the storyline, and she says, "Hey, in a perfect world, you want to be above the person or below the person." So in your
Yeah.
particular instance, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hey, Mercer, we need to partner." But I go, "Oh, wait a minute. Am I competition on the storyline, or am I before or after you on the storyline, on the customer journey, let's say, call it what you will." So, let's see if I can add some clarity to this. I had a video editor reach out to me. They're always reaching out to me, right? Hey, we want to edit your content, right?
Yeah.
So I've started repitching them and saying, hey, look, I teach people how to go on what I call an influence tour. That's my branding. And that is like going on podcasts and things like that and getting on stages. And I said, hey man, you I'm before him on the storyline. He needs people who have spoken on a podcast, got that video content so he can edit it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
amazing. So
Yeah.
would
So
you
you're feeding his funnel in other words. He needs you to do your step before he can do his. Yes.
correct? So I start pitching them, hey man, I think we there might be an opportunity for us to collaborate. If you have an email list, your people could really be served by learning how to,
Love that.
yeah, right?
Yeah. What do you do with all these edited videos now that you got them? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, right, and
Yeah.
yeah, and so the first person I just did that to is like, "Heck yeah, I think we do need to collaborate because you do." He needs his people to create videos, his customers to create videos so they have work to do,
Yep.
right? So,
Yep.
w with that in mind, where would you see me on your storyline, or do you see me as competition? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely not competition because we don't teach the marketing. If anything, it could be, and it's almost kind of like with your video editor. It's a yes and right. It's like you could be the guy who's feeding his funnel to do video editing because he needs you to do that as a customer. You could also be the guy that helps his customers take it to the next level, therefore helping him with retaining as he's deeper in the funnel. So you can help him in both spots. And I think it's something similar for any sort of utility like that. Like video editing is a utility that's necessary for marketing, just like designing and building web pages is, just like measurement is. It's a thing you need to do for your marketing. So You could bring and say, hey, I've got all these people that are on stages, they're driving, they podcast, they built it all out, they're driving traffic, and some of them are getting results, but they're not sure how. And that's kind of scary for everybody because that's what most companies have is black box marketing. They put the money in, money comes out, you hope it's more than you put in. And the worst case, if it is always more, then you don't think about it because there's a lot of what we call the curse of a good offer. You don't think about it. It's like, oh, I spent $500 on Facebook. They gave me $1,000 in sales. It's awesome. I spent 2,000. Give me $5,000 sales. It's awesome. And then you scale until you're doing $10,000 a day. And then one day Facebook keeps it. And then everybody goes, oh my God, what happened? What changed? What broke? No one knows because no one was setting up the measurement. So that's what I mean, curse of a good offer. It can be a problem. You cannot have a black box in your company because that's the thing that when it starts smoking, you need to know how to fix it. And if you're like the first time you're opening it is when it's on fire, it's really hard to fix a machine. You really can't let it get to that level. So that's why you have to understand your machinery. So you could bring us those people that say, hey, listen, they've figured out the traffic. They've got the eyeballs coming to the sites and they just aren't sure what the behaviors are on those sites. And we'll walk them through that process. We'll help them understand. People ask us all the time. They're like, how is this? How are people going through? We're just trying to figure out how somebody uses our blog. And I go, that's a great question. How are they supposed to use your blog? And they're like, I don't know. Like, why do you even have a blog? Well, I mean, SEO. It was here when I got. I no one did. You know what? Good point. I have no idea what the purpose of this page is. Well, that's why you can't set up measurement yet. You have to have a point for your marketing. So we help them reset that, and then we can gather them forward. At the same time, we're going to have a lot of people that have the measurement, have figured out maybe they paid traffic stuff, and they're looking at podcasting, they're looking at stages, and they're going, God, I wonder how we could do that because I want to be able to expand out that traffic. So you come in on that side. And you say, hey,
Yeah.
here's an expert that we can have that does a training to help you go to the next level. Profit School, we have this whole separate brand called Profit School that would absolutely be good for that because they need to learn how to generate traffic and different methods and how to be better at their podcast if they're trying to start out and want to get some tips, and then you've got people who are doing that want to be better business owners. So we
Yes.
can exchange. And that's what I love about the tribal sort of marketing. Your tribe and my tribe, we come together, we help each other out. There's going to be a certain amount of cross-pollination. And that's awesome because both those people still stay with us, right? They're not leaving me to go to you. It's yes, and we've now transferred the ideas and we both have them now, which is awesome. And there's a bunch of people who haven't yet made that move, but at least they've got the recordings in their respective members areas or wherever, so
Yeah.
maybe one day they will. I love this technique. And I think if more marketers did that, they'd be better at building relationships and those relationships would be stronger. Your companies would be more stable. Would they necessarily scale to $1 billion? No, but I don't think that everybody's dream should be the next billionaire. I appreciate the aspiration. I think is great, but if that's the definition of success, it's like you might as well be right up there. But I'm also going to win the lottery. Like
I,
the odds are just not with you, So you could people win the lottery every day. Doesn't mean it's a good retirement plan. Both things are true, right? Both things are
yeah.
true. So it's like it doesn't mean it's a retirement plan. So I'm like, if people did this more and had this more human connection, I think everybody's company would be more stable. They might be a little smaller, but they can be huge. That could be a $5 or $10 million company, which could be incredibly profitable if you're managing
Yeah.
it right. So there's lots of room, I think, for smaller businesses. And I'm super passionate specifically about small business owners for this reason. There's so much room for us to work together because if we can figure out how to get out of our own respective silos, talk more with one another, help each other out, and connect with one another as business owners, we become even more powerful as a group, right? When it comes to like things like government. Like right now, small business owners, largest employer on the planet, very little say in what goes on because we're so broken apart. We don't have that voice. So it's like, let's do this here with marketing and make some money. And at the same time, who knows where that goes? So I love small business owners. They take action, they make things happen. We change the world, we create jobs. Every big company was a small company. At one point, you had to go through that. So the more people that are doing that sort of marketing, the better. The more people that are doing those sort of relationships, the better.
So good. I have I was just hanging out with Dean Edelson. This was a month or two ago, but Dean did a bunch of copywriting stuff for Russell Brunson. I'm not hanging out with Russell Brunson. I just happened to because I'm in that
Not yet.
loop of people. Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, but Dean says Dean goes, yeah, Misha. A lot of people lose sight on. There's nothing wrong with a little $50,000 a month business, right? That's what the amount,
Seriously,
right? Like,
absolutely
oh my
right.
god, yes,
Yep. Yep,
yeah.
absolutely right. People underestimate because they're so busy on the I got to get to seven figures, eight figures. And it's whose dream are you living? at a certain point. It's like,
Yeah.
are you thinking that because the sales page just told you to think that? Because
Yeah.
that might be where you need to question that. Be like, okay, maybe I'm just happy. Because there's a lot of people that have grown, and what was the phrase? Somebody said it really well. They were like, they scaled poor or they scaled broke because they kept scaling this one thing. They didn't know how to run the company, so they didn't really understand cash flow. They just thought money in, paid traffic, money out, but they didn't. And they were doing things. They were doing all the right things. Like I knew my cost per acquisition. I knew what the average person. I knew my LTV was worth $15,000, let's say, and I would spend up to $5,000 to get that $15,000 person. What they weren't measuring for is how long it took to get to 15,000. So it took them a year and a half, and now they realize that they started scaling, paying $5,000 for clients. Going, what you're saying is the next year and a half, societally, market wise, tech wise, community wise, product wise, has to be exactly the same as the last 18 months for this 15,000 to come in. If that's the case, it's going to work. But man, to say the last year and a half is going to look like the next year and a half has never happened. So that's going to be,
Never.
and that's what happens. They scale so much when that money's not coming back, but now they've scaled so much, they don't have the cash coming back in to replenish the accounts, and they're broken. And they could have seen it coming if they'd planned it out better, but they didn't know to do that.
Yeah.
So that's where Profit School comes from. It's like that whole idea of wanting to solve how to use systems for normal people. Like measure you is like how to use Google Analytics when you're not a data person. Like Google Analytics is geeky, right? Like it's made by engineers for engineers by Google. Like it's the most geeky thing in the world. And it's really there to get you to spend more money on Google Ads. That's why they do that, because they want to give you all the data so you can go spend more money on Google Ads and get more sales, which is fine. But it's geeky. It's not made for like everyday normal people, and we teach it in a way that it is. We like, hey, you can ignore this part, use this piece. This piece is what's going to give you the 80% that's going to help you move things forward. And then if you really want to geek out, you can go into special room where we have those people that are doing that. But that's a rare breed. So that's what we try to do with Measure You with Measurement. Do the same thing with Profit School when it comes to other systems like measuring your numbers, working on cash flow, managing your team, getting your team to do the work instead of getting your team to deliver work to you, which is what most of them do. We call it the wagon wheel, where it's like I hire a bunch of people and all they do is make me do everything, right? Where it's like, why am I finding all the errors? How come I'm the only one that knows how to do this? How come I'm the one that just uses Google all the time? I'm like, well, because you're training them to do that. It's your system. You don't know it, but it's a very real system you're using that's causing that. There are different things you can do to help your team work independently and get results for you if you use it. This is what I love about talks like this, because
This is
everybody's got these issues.
Yeah, this is amazing. Profitschool.com, which looks awesome. The content that's available there looks awesome. And it's somehow you managed to get profitschool.com. Did that fall into your lap,
And
or did
no, we
you
bought that.
arm
We
wrestle
bought
someone?
Yeah, we bought that, but it was surprisingly inexpensive. It was less than what I thought it was going to be. So that just goes to show, like, maybe, like, if you come up with a name and you're like, that's gone, I already know somebody's got it, and there's someday maybe list, I'm going to create a company around this. Sometimes they do, and they have something real, but sometimes it's like, oh, it's for sale, and you can negotiate a little bit.
Yeah.
And it wasn't much. I think honestly that one's like, and I'm doing this from memory, so I could be wrong, but I think it was somewhere around like a few $1,000s. It wasn't. Now that's different for we have an established business, so a few $1,000s not a big deal. If I was starting off, and I had a
That's a
freelancer
risk.
money, right? I would not have bought Profit School. I
Yeah.
would have bought like getprofitschool.com, or something with
Buy
with the
Profit
eye
School.
on that one. Yeah, like, okay, here's a
Yeah.
plan. So
Yeah.
it depends where you are,
Yeah.
but relatively it was easy to get. Yeah.
Okay, let's walk through an exercise for my audience. For
Let's
my
do it.
audience here. Okay, so we figured out that um on the storyline, because I'm all about this right now. I'm hyper
Yep.
fixated on the storyline. Where do I fit? Are we competition? Am I after? Am I before? And I loved how you shined a light on with videographers. I could be before or after, depending.
Yes.
And it's the it's the copy that's driving that, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's the copy. I just need to be able to tell the story quickly so you understand, the copywriter, excuse me, the videographer understands, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm always want to know people that I think about partnering with, and clearly we have an opportunity here. Are you building an email list? You have an email list. I already know you, since you where you
We
are in
do.
your business cycle, that you
Yeah.
have one. But are you constantly building it? Are you fixated on it? Are you hyper? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, because that is our community list, right? That's how we get them in the communities, join the email list, and then get them to go into the free community
Yeah.
as we go through. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I teach a master class on what do I call it? What do I call it now? I just renamed it and redeveloped it. So good. I've been doing it. It's so much fun. It's called the PFF. No, the FPP. Find Pitch Profit. Hold on.
Like
Bear with
that.
me. I can't believe I'm going to do this to you. Hold on, everybody. We're going to have dead noise. Bear with me. By the way, I committed a long time ago to publish everything with as little editing as possible. So
I love that. It's just it's one of the first people I ever learned Facebook traffic from. She was just starting out, like when they were, and it was literally like back in the day when they just started releasing it. She's running. She's like, "Hey, everybody, I'm gonna do Facebook traffic," and she was known as kind of the expert at the time. She jumps on. She's like, "Oh, blah blah blah." 2 days into it, she gets her account closed because she had done something. And I was like, and she's like, "Now I'm gonna figure out how to get an account open. I'm gonna show you all that." And she just took it like that. It was like, "I'm gonna,"
nice.
and I was like, "You know what? That's
Th-
that's real
it-
life." So
That's
thank you for
it.
not covering the blemishes, because everybody else is like, "I followed your steps and my account got shut down." I'm like, of course it did, because they didn't tell you that they went through 8 accounts. They're just showing you the edited versions. So I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So my find pitch profit framework, my 3-step system to get on podcast, build influence, and drive results without overthinking the process or making it harder than it needs to be. Because so many people overthink it, make it way harder than it needs to be.
Yeah.
So, would that be of value to your list? Or how about this? If I was to teach a master class on that, is that something you'd say, "Hey, yeah,
Oh
that is
yeah.
something I'd like to promote to my list." Yeah.
Yeah. We could definitely do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you've got something like, we could do either, whether it's um because you already have this done, right? This is
Yep.
a finished thing.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So if this is done, we can totally set it. Like we do things in Measure U, and we'll doing the same thing with Profit School. And what we're doing, this is another sort of managerial lesson. We're duplicating the exact model we're doing with Measure U for Profit School. So Measure U is a free community. Profit School's got a free community. Measure U has the quick starts. Profit School has their version of quick starts courses. Measure U's got the lifetime version of itself. So does Profit School. They call it the Pioneers. We have the Drivers Mastermind in Profit School group, and it's called the Accelerator in Measure U, but they're exactly the same structure. So our team knows how to work everything, because it's the same machine, just two different sides of the same coin in a way, right? So the reason I mention this is because we have these things in Measure U called Toolbox Thursday. And this goes back to how do you take care of your list, and at the same time take care of yourself a little, is we want to email the list to get them to nurture and engage. But if you pitch them all the time, they're not going to do that. At the same time, if you don't pitch them at all, which is the opposite mistake, or worse, you don't mail them ever because you're afraid to, then it just goes south even faster. So you have to consistently mail them with something that's of interest. So we came up with Toolbox Thursday, where we put up and say, "Hey, here's this cool thing we can feature." Sometimes it's an affiliate deal. Sometimes it's just a free tool or a cool extension that we found that would be useful. And we can promote that stuff. That particular email works so well that if I don't send it on a day, which now it's so automated that would never happen, but back in the day it used to, and people would email me and be like, "Hey, I didn't get the toolbox this week. I just want to make sure I'm still on what happened." And I'd have to explain, like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry I didn't send you the affiliate offer for this week," because of how valuable that tool was for them. And then again, they're not all affiliate offers, but that was the point. It was a useful tool. It was relevant to the market. So if something like this, we can present and say, "This is how it's relevant to the Measure U audience. This is how it's relevant to the Profit School audience." We can figure out how to do both audiences. If we can create some tool or workshop around it, and have content, so much the better. We've got the Profit School podcast that we do with Jeff and I, that we've done for years. So that could be something that maybe we can use that as an example of, like, oh, here's some ways that we took our podcast, use these tools and techniques, and then case study ourselves into that. Right? I mean, I think there's lots of stuff we could do
That's
with those
amazing.
things.
Amazing. I love it. I love this brainstorming. And I want to go through the next step of the process, because so many people, and myself too, like, we have this amazing engagement right now. Oh my gosh, there's so many opportunities. I can serve your audience, you can serve mine. And it's win 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 for
And we're
everybody,
all trying to figure
literally.
out how to help each other's audience. That's the key. No,
Yeah.
we're not talking about, oh, good. None of us just said, "Okay, make 100 grand. What your seat?" We're not even
Yeah.
talking about the numbers. It's
No.
just, how can we help our audience? because
Yeah.
that's what helps us. We do that, we automatically get helped. We don't need to worry about it. The audience, our member, our email list, our users, our clients, they will take care of us if we help them.
They
Yes,
will. And we're literally making the world a better place,
that is the idea.
right?
Exactly right. Yep.
So we talk about it, we banter it about what's the best way to execute on that. Are you the person I talk to,
Mhm.
or because
Yeah,
you're a
reach out.
busy guy,
Yeah,
right? Oh, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. I would just say send me an email.
Okay.
So yeah, just send me an email and we'll get to it. Normally, what I'll do is I'll talk to Jeff about it. So we have every day we have a little touch call we call the morning brew call. So we'll get on that call and I'll go through and be like, hey, here's some opportunities we have. How do we think we can work these out? And we can introduce you to him. Maybe the three of us jump on a call and talk about more specific stuff. Maybe I just come back to you and say, okay, here's what we think we can do. But with a business partner, that's the only difference. Like we have the business partner complexity a tiny bit. So just to make sure he's clued in on stuff because he handles all the offer side. I handle most of the system side, right? So we sort of have three areas in our companies. It's offers, products, and systems, hence ops. So we always talk about the ops system. But so because he does that, it's like, well, this is definitely going to affect offers. And if I can bring him something and work with the products team to say, we got to create a product that's a webinar that focuses on this new thing. Like there's all sorts of cool things we can work out, but it starts the
Man,
conversation with an email. Absolutely.
I love it. Amazing. This is so good. This is so, so good. I'm so glad I asked the questions. And I'm also trying to get a lot of times this stuff happens in the background or it happens when I hit stop or things like that. And so I'm really want to be able to point my members to this. I could literally go say, hey, if you want to see some of this in action, go to this spot and
Yep.
listen, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep. That's
what else
exactly
was I
right.
going to say about that? I think, man, we've gone long. This has been incredible. This is going to be so good. Oh, two more questions, and then
Sure.
we'll both get back to the day. Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income podcast. Did you speak on his show?
It did. Yep. It was a number of years back. Yeah.
Wow. And then, do you remember how you got on at the time?
We trained Pat's team. So I've known Pat for a while, but I met him directly at because I mean life is always a series of happy accidents. Like this is why it's tough when you buy business books by entrepreneurs to say just follow my plan. I'm like their plan was 80% luck and the 20% is what they wrote down. Like they underestimated the other stuff, right? Everybody does. That's okay. But where I met him was I was speaking at Social Media Marketing World. And the reason I was speaking there is because I was speaking at TNC. The reason I was speaking there is because I happened to be working with digital marketers, one of our first clients, right? Because I happen to live in Austin. Like this is where that came from. And I just network. So it's networking, meeting people. So that's the connection. I met him he was also a speaker. So I just met him and we were talking about measurement and stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, maybe you can help our team or here's the problems we're trying to fit. So we actually did one of those embedded support programs, which at the time was nowhere near $20,000 because we were just getting started, but we did train his team on how to do all of that. Sort of stuff. So that's where, and then eventually he's like, man, we should have you on the podcast. And I'm like, let's do it. And, fast forward a little bit, we finally got that connected, but it's all genuinely just trying to help people solve problems is all
Yeah.
I try to do. And when we're training people on how do you sell measurement services, because we have a certain group of people that will come to learn measurement services so they can sell it as an agency, because it can be very lucrative, especially in today's world. We'll tell them like, how do I get started? Help people, go find groups and answer questions and give out your expertise. Because at a certain point, everyone starts going, hey, this person, I'm going to tag them in because I saw them giving out their expertise over here. Maybe they'll do it over here. And now you're being recommended. Even though it's for your free expertise, you're being recommended. You build a brand, even if it's a personal brand, right? Like in my case, Mercer is a brand. So I would do that and build it under Mercer. And then Mercer started measuremarketing.io, which eventually became Measure You. But that's how it's all about, just helping people out. And then I think those connections naturally will start to appear for you.
I love it. Oh my, the question just evaporated. Oh, it was a good one too.
That means it'll come back. That's
Yes.
correct. I can give you something in the meantime is
Yeah.
when you were
Go ahead.
talking about the story, the story and
Oh,
you had
the
like the before and the
storyline.
after, and then
Yeah.
storyline and then competition.
Yes.
So here's an example of how we had competition that turned into an amazing thing. So we had a brand called Measure School that's was originally teaching Google Analytics stuff way before we were. They were way in this space before we were. Their YouTube channel has 150,000 subscribers. Ours has 9. Right? Very different companies. So we were working with him. Him and I got connected again, networking, just meeting other speakers. And they said, hey, you guys maybe should meet finally. But we were direct competition. There was no better example than that. And all we would do is jump on a call once a month and just talk about each other's businesses and be very honest about it. Because I don't care. I don't believe in scarcity. So I'm just like, here's what all my numbers are, and here's what it is, and here's what the funnels did, and what do you think, and what would yours be? And we'll just both help each other. I don't care, because we have slightly different markets, but they're pretty. There's a lot of overlap. There's 80% overlap. So finally, he's like, you know what? Why don't we? This is right when COVID happened. He goes, there's no more conferences anymore for a little while. Why don't we create like a virtual conference? What if you and I did a webinar? And he had at the time, he had a much bigger list. So I was like, okay, we'll do this thing. I said, what if we do a summit? We'll do like a virtual summit, and we'll do, okay, yeah. And so we started doing this, and we bought all the books on summits that the marketers wrote, and we were like, those suck. We're not going to do that. So we created this brand new thing, this new experience. We did a 3-day live stream, had all these speakers come through. And our whole thing was like, let's just email everybody we know in the market. We'll get everybody to collective networks coming together. We're going to create this thing called Measure Summit. So measuresummit.com. Now in its 6th year, in 2025 will be its 6th year. But from year one, now remember, this audience is geeky. It is the pitch is you have 3 days of listening to Google Analytics, BigQuery, Looker Studio, Adobe Analytics, like mixed model, like everything that like the data teams would be like, oh my God, it's gonna be amazing. And everyone else is like, what is this? Right. So we're thinking, okay, this is a really niche market. I would be so happy if we get 1,000 people. And we got year one, 10,000. So we
No
had
way.
10,000. This is what I was saying. I was seeing the things on the forms coming through, and I'm like, we're getting hit by spam bots. And I'm like, oh my God, no, we're not. This is just a really good offer. Like, this niche isn't served at all. Data teams, nobody talks to them. So we created this, and it was just free training. And that is one of the more powerful lists we have now. It became two competitors coming together. We both side by side, very much like this is side by side, and we live stream it, and then we interject the content. So like a podcast summit that would be 2 days long with all the podcast stuff would be an amazing thing to do. And especially in that way, we made it really energetic. We had scavenger hunts, we had games people would play, we had the chat room we were active with, and we do it every year. So now if you go to LinkedIn and do hashtag Measure Summit, or look up hashtag How I Measure Summit, you will see people taking pictures where they've got the computers going, this is how I'm Measure Summiting. And it's just a blast. It's a huge party for like 3 days once a year. So every year we've had about 10 to 15,000 roughly that sign up for this event, that's going through. And that came from direct competitor just talking to them and being willing to just help each other out, because we're both good people trying to help our audiences. Same pattern, even though you're direct competitors, doesn't mean a loss in revenue. It can still mean more revenue for everybody. And you help the market, you help the community. And to this day, like, we have people from NASA on that list. It's the craziest thing. It's such an insanely cool list.
Wow.
It's a cool group. I love the Measure Summit crowd.
That's
So,
awesome. I'm
but
looking at,
that's an example of like story, right? How do
yeah,
you pull these two things together? It presented itself as an opportunity in the conversation, and we took action toward it. Because it could
yeah,
have just been a good idea that everybody goes, oh, it's a great idea, I'll contact you next Thursday, and then you're gone, right? So, but
yeah.
we took action, which was great.
Beautiful. When is the next one? I'm actually at the site right now.
It'll
Measure Summit.
be the next one will be in October. Typically, they're around October. We don't have the exact dates yet. So, but in the first quarter, so right around by February or March, we'll have the dates decided of 2025. We announce the list. We do the call for speakers. Typically, we'll have 50 or 60 different sessions. They're not all live streamed anymore. So we have the main stage where you have top 15 sessions that are live streamed during the actual live stream. And then we've got what we call the on-demand second stage. So users can come through there, and the entire event is free. And then we just sell the recordings, and that's how the community helps support us. So is it something that makes like tens of millions of dollars? No, it's not designed to. It's designed to take care of the community. It helps get our brands out, the Measure You brand, right, out there, because we're one of the sponsors, go figure, even though it's its own separate brand. But Measure Summit needs to be its own separate brand. And this goes back to the brand conversation. If I made Measure You say, okay, Measure You now owns Measure Summit, right? Which is true, because now we just recently bought them out. So now we own it all. But if we said, oh, it's measureu.com/Measure Summit, it would be seen as a Measure You thing, and NASA wouldn't be on the list. But because
Yeah,
it's Measure Summit, it can be carved out, speak to it. That brand can speak to a different audience that does overlap with Measure You, but not entirely, because it's more data, really corporate style audiences. So we keep it as a separate brand. It has its own separate CRM and everything for that reason. So the power of brand is so very important when you come through there.
I love it. That is awesome. I'm checking it out. I wanted to see it in action, so now I've got to wait till October. Darn it.
You probably do, yeah. Well, now this is the thing. Now that we own it, we can think about more ways to help improve the revenue from that particular brand. Because I definitely want to make that my it's one of my big goals in 2025 is working with Measure U to help get that happening. Because at the time, because we were partnering, this is the problem with the JV stuff. When you're partnering, we both had companies that were um, fairly small back when it started, right? And
Yeah.
then Measure Summit helped boost both our revenues. We were splitting the ticket on, splitting the revenue. Measure Summit, and it worked well. But as our companies grew, and then ours started growing pretty rapidly, as we grew, the ideas you have, you go, well, do I put the idea into the thing where I make all the profit? Or do I put the idea into the thing where I split half the profit automatically, which makes it harder to be profitable? Right? So because it's
Yes.
Measure Summit, we split all the dollars. So we finally bought Measure Summit. We bought them their side out of it, and they were
Yeah.
ready, which was fine. It was great. We still work together. We're still friends. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Couldn't have asked for a better way to wrap that up. But when we did that, well, now we have the ability to say, okay, let's put all these cool ideas into Measure U because now, or Measure Summit, because now we're actually going to get all the revenue for it. You know. So we would expect there's going to be more lunch and learn events, more free training events, more
Yeah.
opportunities to join and take care
Yeah.
of the list because those are their email marketers. You got to email the list. We would email that list once a year, and it was right around the time. And so every year we would go from 15,000 people down to 2,000 people, back up to 15,000 people, down to 2,000 people. And like a marketer every year, I'd be like, we got to stop doing this. We know better. But no one knew what to email them on January because we weren't doing anything until October. So we just ignore them for 6 months and start over. Now we don't have to do that anymore. So there's everyone's made obvious mistakes no matter how successful they are. You can look at Elon Musk and go like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you should never have done this because it was so obvious, blah blah blah. And the same thing on my end. People are gonna look at it, when did you do this thing? You could have done this with, I absolutely could have, just couldn't figure out how to do it at the time. But we can now, and that's what we can work with, is what we got right now. So now we're heads down getting that stuff done, and
Love
not
it.
crying over the stuff that could have been, because who cares? Past is
And
as the past is.
absolutely, and trusting in the divine timing of things,
This
right?
is exactly right. The past, everything that's happened serves you to get to the next level. And
Yep.
the past is set. I never argue the past. I don't care about it. It's there. It's set. It is what it is. What's not is the future. And the future is unlimited. And what I have is the present. And the present, I look at the past and I go, where was I? And that sort of feeds my present. Here's where I currently am because of where I was. Then because of that, I go, where am I more likely to go? What's my best future? The more likely future to take the next action. And that's how we can kind of hopefully improve things for everybody as we go through.
So good. I one last question. 30
Good.
seconds or less. Are you doing dashboards and things like that on your are you offering that tool to your uh, measured through your measure.u? So measurement
Yeah.
to like yeah.
Yeah, the short answer is we use a platform called Looker Studio, which is that Google makes. It's for
Okay.
dashboarding. It's free. So we use that. So we teach our members to build those, and you connect it into Google Analytics or whatever your data is. You can connect into lots of different stuff,
Awesome.
and then you can just build your reports for that. So we have a dashboard toolkit that's available for the free members, for the community members, where it's got all the parts and pieces of different dashboards, what they look like, get some inspiration, and then you can go create your free Looker Studio account and build it on your own, or copy one of the templates that are back there
Love it.
for it.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Mercer, this has been so good. Literally, I could keep going on. I've written down so
I
many
love that.
questions.
That's perfect. That's what these are for.
Yeah,
Next thing, we're like hardcore history's got nothing. We want 7 hours on a podcast. It's great.
I know. Hey,
Both lost our voices. It was wonderful.
I know, right? Oh my God, I love his. He has everyone watching, listening. Not to get you off of what we're doing, but Dan Carlin, hardcore history, super fun. Oh my God,
Absolutely. Oh,
his.
and I promise I would close the loop on those UTMs when we're measuring
Oh yeah,
podcasts,
yeah, yeah,
right? So the
yeah.
part where you're like, how does everybody find out about you? This is how we measure podcasts. So I would tell everybody, go to measureu.com, and you can do this now so you can
Okay.
see it. Go to measureu.com/table rush. And now I'm really hoping that's been set up. It should be. And then now see what you look in the URL, and you will see how it goes to measureu.com. And then
Okay.
you've got the parameters that are on the side. But if you look in those parameters, those are what I mean by UTMs for people that aren't familiar with that. So it says UTM source equals Table Rush. So I know it
Okay.
came from Table
Yes.
Rush. It says UTM medium equals podcast. So I know it was a type of traffic we call podcast traffic. And then we put in there in the campaign, that's the purpose. Why are they coming there? So it says community because we're trying to get them to join the community. So now our reports will say, well, this traffic should be joining the community. So we're going to measure it to see if it joined the community, not if it bought the accelerator program, because that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to join the community. Did this podcast traffic work the way it was supposed to? And let's say it does. And we go, like people are asking me, well, how do you know it came from 4 years ago? Well, if you keep looking in that URL, you will see where it says UTM term. That's what we talked about, measurement basics, right? And then in the UTM content at the very, very end of that URL, when it loads up, you'll see it says December 2024, which is when this podcast was recorded. And that's how I know, oh, this traffic came from that podcast that I recorded in December when I talked about this for the purposes of getting them in the community. And I can see if it worked or not. And because it works so well, podcast traffic in general, that's why we put so much more money. And instead of giving it to Zuckerberg, I'd rather give it to agencies to get great podcast hosts and have these incredible conversations. Because we literally got a contract for actually not true. It's probably right around 100 grand from a podcast where I was a guest. He happened to run a podcast for an e-commerce thing, and he was a developer and had an agency. And one of his huge clients, he was like, "Man, this measurement thing," and he brought us into them, and they were redesigning. It was a big, giant international conglomerate, like big, giant company everyone's heard of, and they were redesigning their website, and they wanted to embed measurement so the website would basically measure itself and phone home and build its own reports, which we helped them to do. And it was like that came from a podcast. Cost me what, 150 bucks probably to get that, or maybe 200 bucks to get that scheduled. That's $200, $100,000 sale. Great podcast. Look into them. Yes. I don't have to tell you. I know you're trying to tell everybody, but I'm just saying, I'm giving you yes, absolutely. Podcast traffic is something you got to work on, practice, get your own. It's a great, great vehicle.
Oh my gosh. And it's just so much fun. Let's be
So
real
much
about
fun.
that.
Yeah, it really
So
is.
good.
The conversations go, you have no idea where half. It's awesome. Yep.
It's awesome. Hey,
It's awesome.
literally every podcast interview I do, I end with, and so I have one more question for you.
Sure.
And it's inevitably when I hit stop and I've been interviewed, I'm like, oh, I meant to say, or I should have said, or something like that. Anything that comes to your mind before we hit stop?
I think if anyone's interested in the measurement thing in particular, it is very, very easy to complicate things. And I think this is with measurement specifically, but it's also with everything, marketing, running a business, whatever people are trying to do. It's easy to complicate things. And I was literally talking to my team about this earlier. They see step one and then they go, okay, well, what's after that? And then we go, oh, well, that's step two. And they go, cool, what's after that? And they go, step three. What's after that? Step four. What's after that? Step five. What's after that? Step six. But they haven't started step one. So then they see that, okay, there's 6 or 7 or 8 or 25 steps or whatever it is. And they go, cool, I'm now going to do all of them. And that's what causes failure most of the time. Because what they are underestimating is, let's say I have 10 steps to do measurement or create a podcast or promote my podcast, whatever the thing is. There's 10 steps to it. Step one builds you for step two. So all you really need to know is step one and step two. And you need to know that there is a step three, but you don't even need to know what that is yet. You just need step one and step two. So you know where you are and where you're going. When you get to step two, then you need to know there's a step, what the step three is. And then you need to know there's a step four, but you don't even know what step four is. You just know it's there. And then you focus again. Now I'm on step two. I go to step three. Now I look up. Cool. There's a step four. Now let's interview step four and figure out what step four is and know if there's a step five or not. In other words, am I done after this or is there another step after this? What's the other step? Don't know. I'll see the second mountaintop when I climb the first mountaintop, and I think a lot of individuals, and it goes back to kind of how we started this, good enough to get going, make it better later, right? Do you know what that idea of perfection keeps progress from happening often because they're trying to do too much too soon. We call it building a helicopter in a cave, where it's like a helicopter is a useful vehicle when it's on the mountain, but if you stick it in a cave, it is not a useful vehicle. You can do it, but you're going to end up dismantling the thing anyway afterwards because it's just too complicated for a mount or for a cave. A cave you need to walk out of. In a valley, you might use a bike because it's easier with a bike or a motorcycle. In the mountains, you're going to need a helicopter going from summit to summit to summit. So use the right vehicle at the right time. So try not to overcomplicate stuff. Focus on the first step and your next step. If there's other steps you need to do, just know that they're there. You don't need to engage with them. Just take the action on the first and second. The rest of it will naturally, if you rinse and repeat, it'll naturally happen for you.
So good. It's actually knowing the rest of the steps is a disservice.
It's exactly right. Knowing they're there, fine. Knowing exactly all the details around them, it's not useful in a lot of cases. Not for taking action on the initial step.
Beautiful. Great way to end. Mercer, this has been amazing. I'm going to hit stop and we'll say goodbye offline.
Love it. Thanks for having me, Misha. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.